After spending a week in Thailand, we arrived at Istanbul airport at 2 p.m. We had already known that getting an Uber from the airport could be difficult, so we headed straight to the official airport taxi stand to go to our hotel in the city. Although we downloaded both the Uber and Bytaxi apps, it seemed much easier to just take the official airport taxi when arriving. It took about 40 minutes to reach the Intercontinental Istanbul, which we booked 3 nights using IHG points. Since it was our first time in Istanbul, we were really looking forward to it. However, as we entered the city and approached the hotel, the surrounding area looked quite old and congested, so our first impression wasn't the best. Also, the hotel was very busy, and it took quite a while to check in. It seemed like this hotel put a lot of effort into its lavish decor. They provided delicious desserts and fruit, which we appreciated. However, the room itself had an old-fashioned decor and felt a bit worn, so it wasn't really to our taste. Also, the bellboy who brought our luggage to the room didn't leave right away and clearly waited for a tip, which made us feel uncomfortable, as if he was expecting it as a given. Another thing that surprised us was that someone came into the room every day to check if we had consumed anything from the minibar. It was our first time experiencing hotel staff entering the room daily just for this, and it felt quite intrusive. The hotel was situated slightly uphill, so the view from the room was nice. After resting, we went out for dinner. The roads around the hotel were not very clean, and many parts of the city felt old and worn down, so our first impression wasn't very positive. We passed through Taksim Square, where there were many people coming and going. This area is always full of tourists. Connected directly to Taksim Square, you can see Istiklal Caddesi with its over 100-year-old tram. This street and the area around it are always bustling with people. Shops and restaurants line both sides of Istiklal Caddesi, making it a lively and vibrant street to walk along. We walked about 12 minutes from the hotel to a kebab restaurant called Zubiero Kakbasai in the Taksim area. The air felt a bit stuffy and polluted during the walk, which made it slightly uncomfortable. There are many similar kebab restaurants in this area, and they all seem to offer a similar menu and atmosphere. Inside the restaurant, you can actually see the grilling area, which seems to attract a lot of customers. Watching the meat being grilled adds to the experience and gives the place a lively, authentic feel. The kebabs themselves were decent, but the prices for the dishes were quite high. It seemed like they were charging more, probably because it's a popular spot for tourists. I couldn't help but feel that the place was very commercialized, with a strong focus on making money. On the second day in Istanbul, we went to visit the famous mosques. First, we walked to the Kabata's tramway station from the hotel. The surroundings along the way weren't very picturesque. When we arrived at the tram station, we needed to buy a ticket for the T1 tram, but the machine was broken. No matter how hard we tried, we couldn't get the ticket. When I asked the station attendant, they told me we could just swipe our personal credit cards to enter. The ticket machine was old, unreliable, and broken, which was frustrating. It felt like there was a lack of proper guidance or service for tourists, and it wasn't so much about the ticket price, but the fact that small systems like this weren't functioning properly. It left a bad impression. The T1 tram takes you through the main tourist attractions and passes through the old city, offering a nice view of the cityscape. However, another inconvenience was that the air conditioning wasn't on despite the hot weather. It was so hot that we had to keep fanning ourselves. Later, I found out that the air conditioning is sometimes turned off to save electricity. It was surprising and a bit frustrating to realize that there was no air conditioning in the taxi or even on the tram. We got off at Sultanahmet station on the T1 tram and walked for about 3 minutes to reach the Blue Mosque first. This area is always crowded with tourists, and there are many tour groups as well. To enter the Blue Mosque, many tourists have to wait in a long line. Be prepared to stand in line for a while, especially in the hot weather. You enter through the main entrance, but before entering, women's heads are checked to make sure they are covered with a scarf, so it's best to bring one with you in advance. Additionally, you'll need to take off your shoes and carry them with you inside. Inside the mosque, we admired the intricate decorations. However, having previously visited the Sheikh Zayed Grand Mosque in Abu Dhabi, this one didn't evoke the same sense of awe. Another thing that stood out was that, since we had to take off our shoes to enter, we noticed the carpet wasn't very clean. So, we ended up walking without socks. When leaving, we put our socks back on and wore our shoes again. The carpet wasn't very pleasant, making the experience less comfortable. There were a lot of tourists, but we didn't feel a strong sense of awe at the mosque. Additionally, it wasn't very well maintained or clean. We quickly took some photos and left. Right next to the Blue Mosque, there was a place selling dondurma. I bought one for my son. The fun part was how they played tricks while handing over the ice cream, but honestly, the ice cream itself wasn't very good. It felt more like a gimmick to attract tourists. We walked about 4 minutes from the Blue Mosque to Hagia Sophia Grand Mosque. This place seems to be one of the main attractions that draw tourists to Istanbul. Tickets for Hagia Sophia Grand Mosque can be purchased for €25 on their official website. However, since we didn't buy them in advance, we had to stand in line at the ticket office in front of the mosque to purchase tickets. It was very hot, and just waiting in line was exhausting. The ticket description wasn't clear, so when we were buying the tickets, the staff recommended purchasing the museum entry ticket along with the mosque entry ticket, which we did for €50 per person. Additionally, after buying the tickets, if you're a woman without a scarf, you have to buy one for €1, and if you're a man, you need to buy a body cover for €3. There was a separate line for buying these covers, so we had to stand in 2 different lines. In such hot weather, it felt like there was a lack of consideration for tourists. After purchasing the tickets, we entered the mosque and made our way upstairs to the 2nd floor. The view from the 2nd floor gave a very Middle Eastern and ancient feel, with its intricate architecture and historical ambience. However, we weren't that interested, so we just had a quick look and left. The fresco on the way out seemed to be famous, but we weren't really interested at all. After leaving the mosque, we had to go to the museum. When we bought the tickets, she said we could visit the museum, but we had no idea where the museum was. We assumed it was inside the mosque or right next to it, so we walked around the area for a while. There were no signs indicating where the museum was. There should have been some signage for the museum, but there was nothing at all around the mosque, so be aware of that. You have to figure it out on your own. Even Google Maps couldn't provide a clear name, so it was impossible to just search for the museum. If you search for Hagia Sophia History and Experience Museum, which is about 6 minutes away from the mosque, you'll find it. There are many famous tourist attractions around, so I couldn't understand why there were no signs at all. This museum was relatively new, with air conditioning inside, and the exhibits were well arranged. The museum explains the important history of the Hagia Sophia through interactive multimedia presentations, which turned out to be better than expected. After visiting the important sites, we took the T1 tram again and arrived at Karaköy station. Karaköy also offers a chance to experience the streets and alleys of Istanbul. We went to Sokak Letsidi Tarihi Balık Durumku Mehmet Usta to try the famous mackerel kebab for lunch. It's a small shop, but there's always a line of people waiting. The mackerel was grilled and wrapped in a flatbread, and the taste was quite mild. There was no seating available, but we managed to squeeze into a small table. However, the heat made it difficult to truly enjoy the kebab. I also tried ayran, a traditional yogurt drink, but I didn't really enjoy it. After lunch, we were exhausted, so walked to a nearby street and hailed a regular taxi to return to the hotel. Even though I tried to call a taxi using the ByTaxi app, it didn't come, so we caught a passing one. When I told the driver the hotel name, he quoted 300 lira. We were too hot and tired to argue, so we agreed to the price. We ended up in the taxi for about 10 minutes and paid 300 lira. What was strange was that the meter wasn't used. Even with the Bytaxi app, I had to wait for a long time, and sometimes the ride would be cancelled. There were also a lot of instances where taxis refused to take us. These experiences left a bad impression of taxis in Istanbul. After resting at the hotel, we walked to Shanghai Restaurant, a Chinese restaurant located just 5 minutes away on foot. We decided to check it out because it had good reviews. Istanbul has many Chinese group tourists, and this restaurant had a lot of such customers. We ordered mapo tofu and sesame chicken, hoping to enjoy some Asian food after a long time, but it was disappointing. The mapo tofu lacked flavor, and the sesame chicken came coated in sesame seeds and fried, served with ketchup for dipping. It was incredibly odd. Given how bad the food was, I started to suspect that all the positive reviews were fake. I was so frustrated that I left a bad review on Google for the first time. Our overall experience in Istanbul wasn't great, largely because so many places seemed dishonest. After returning to the hotel and relaxing, we went up to the hotel bar, City Lights Bar, to enjoy the free drink we received as an IHG member. The staff at the bar were overly friendly, which was a bit much. However, the view from the bar was fantastic, offering a great atmosphere to unwind. The view of Istanbul's nightscape from the bar was stunning, and the calm atmosphere of the bar was just perfect. We had a wonderful time enjoying delicious drinks and snacks, feeling like a family in a cozy moment. It was definitely the highlight of our time in Istanbul. The next morning, we woke up early and walked for about 27 minutes to have kaymak. We walked along Istiklal CD, enjoying the vibrant atmosphere of the street. Karakoy Azad is famous for its kaymak, and since there's usually a line, we made sure to arrive right when it opened at 8 a.m. We ordered menemen, which is scrambled eggs with tomatoes, and kaymak. The menemen wasn't anything particularly special. The famous kaymak has a rich, cream-like texture, similar to heavy cream. It's spread on bread, and while it's a mix of butter and cream, it wasn't particularly new or impressive to us. After resting at the hotel, we tried the Istanbul-style burger for lunch from Kızılkaylar Taksim near Taksim Square. It was a bit more moist and had a savory seasoning. It was okay to eat, but it wasn't particularly impressive. That evening, we wandered around the city and ended up at a very small kebab shop for dinner. It was a local place with few tourists, so the prices were much cheaper. The taste was okay, but it reminded us once again that we don't particularly enjoy kebabs as a type of food. The next day, we checked out of the Intercontinental Hotel and called a taxi using the Bytaxi app. We went to JW Istanbul Marmara Sea, which was about an 18-minute ride away. This hotel is located in Ataköy, a more suburban and residential area of Istanbul, so it was quieter. The hotel itself felt quite new. The lobby facilities were impressive, and the staff were incredibly friendly compared to the Intercontinental. There was nothing overly commercial about the service, which made it even more likable. The room was very comfortable and stylish. The desserts they prepared were truly luxurious and delicious. The view was also amazing, as the hotel is located near the sea. Additionally, the hotel has a fantastic indoor and outdoor pool that guests can freely use. The facilities were excellent, and since it wasn't crowded, we were able to enjoy it in a very relaxed and peaceful manner. The view from the outdoor pool was stunning. My son had a great time swimming, as he loves it so much. There is a Plus shopping mall across from the hotel, and about a 9-minute walk from there is Ataköy subway station. Near the station, there are some restaurants and cafes, and we had lunch at Yeşilköy Köfteci'si, a place that felt like a traditional Turkish home-cooked meal. The soup had a strong herbal flavor with a tomato base, so it wasn't a taste we were used to. The salad was pretty standard. The server recommended a traditional fermented drink called salgam, so we tried it, but it wasn't really to our taste. They also recommended a lamb dish, which was tender but not really our preferred style of food. The grilled chicken and kebab were also just average in flavor. After lunch, we visited the Migros supermarket right next door. We looked around to buy some lokum, Turkish delight, but didn't find anything worth purchasing, so we just left. For dinner, we went back near the area where we had lunch. This time, we ate at a small place called Azilak Kokorek. Since stuffed mussels, midi dolma, are famous in Istanbul, we decided to try them. They were made with mussels, rice, onions, and spices, but they were a bit cold, so the flavor was slightly lacking. We also tried a sandwich with Turkish spiced meat, but it wasn't anything extraordinary. However, it was decent for a light meal. There was a bakery right next to the restaurant, so we bought some bread and headed back to the hotel. After finishing our 4 days in Istanbul, we asked the hotel front desk to arrange a taxi for us the next morning. It took about 30 minutes to get to the airport, where we had a light meal at the IGA lounge. After a 10-hour flight, we returned to Washington, D.C. on Turkish Airlines. We were taken aback and felt frustrated when passengers cut in line at the gate in Istanbul and disregarded the order. Then, after landing in Washington, D.C., we were shocked to see passengers standing up immediately, even though the seatbelt sign hadn't been turned off yet. The usual practice is to wait until the plane has safely reached the gate and the seatbelt sign is turned off before standing, but people got up as soon as we landed. It was surprising and hard to adjust to seeing so many people not following the rules so casually. The Turkish Airlines flight itself had no issues with the service. Istanbul is a city with a long history, and it continuously attracts tourists. We went there with high expectations, but the city felt very run down, and perhaps due to the economic downturn and the collapse of the Turkish lira, it had a very commercialized vibe. All the tourist spots, including the hotels, were expensive and felt overly commercialized. People didn't seem very considerate, and there were many unpleasant experiences during the trip. From the airport to the taxis, the overall mood was not great. Even at the major cultural sites and historical landmarks, there seemed to be a lack of detailed information and consideration for tourists. It felt like the infrastructure was not well developed, but the city was still receiving tourists. While Turkish food is famous, we, as lovers of Greek cuisine, didn't find it to our taste. Maybe it was because we compared it to Southern European cuisine. The quality didn't match the prices, and paying in euros felt unjust, which made it harder to appreciate. None of the experiences felt like good value for the money. I had no desire to shop for souvenirs or Turkish products. Once we left Istanbul and moved to Ataköy, the prices were much more affordable, and the area was not as commercialized. If I were to visit Istanbul again, I'd recommend staying outside the city in a quieter area and just visiting the historical sites for short trips into the city. It's sad that my memories of Istanbul aren't positive, and I don't think I'll return there.